Hey, everybody. Welcome once again to the EP Fan Zone podcast. This is the podcast by, for, and about Elvis fans. And we're glad to be back again with you all this week. Once again, my name's Kevin Booth. I am here with my daughter,
Abby.
Say hello, Abby.
Hi.
That's right. Abby's here once again for a great conversation tonight. And this week, we're going to be joined by another special guest. And this week is really super special because I'm going to be interviewing my brother, my younger brother, Wally. He's 4 years younger than me and a huge Elvis fan. And we grew up listening to Elvis together and growing up on Elvis together. So I thought my first interview, Abby did her very first interview. This is my first interview. So I thought this was the best way to kick off my first interview of somebody from my generation by having my brother who grew up with me listening to the King. So Wally, are you there?
I am here if you can hear me.
I can hear you. We can hear you great. So welcome to the show. We're glad to have you on tonight. And this is going to be a lot of fun. So we're just going to talk. I'm going to ask you some questions. I sent them to you earlier this week so you wouldn't be totally taken by surprise. And it'll just turn into a conversation. But before we get started on that, on the conversation, let's talk about what's coming up in the Elvis world, because this needs to be pushed. Epic is coming out in a couple weeks. And if anybody doesn't know what Epic is, that is the brand new Elvis rockumentary that is coming out. Elvis Presley in Concert by Baz Luhrmann is coming out. Wally, what are your thoughts? Looking forward to it?
Oh man, I am looking forward to it. You, you and I, our last experience was with this new release stuff. We went to see the quote unquote new Elvis on tour with all this footage, and we were all psyched to see it. And we got to the theater, and taking pictures, and we watched the movie, and we're like, did we see anything that was unreleased? And, it was great to see it on the big screen, and anytime you get to see Elvis on the big screen, it's amazing. But, I remember the release of Elvis on tour, I was kind of left disappointed because there wasn't much unreleased footage. So what I'm hoping for with this Baz film is that, not obviously we're going to see it in IMAX. It's going to be incredible. So, I would go watch the Aloha concert in IMAX. I've seen it a billion times and walk out, satisfied. But I'm just really excited to see some unreleased raw footage that we've never seen before, and seeing the side of Elvis that we may have never seen before. I'm just hoping that I'm just hoping this film, and by reading most of the comments, it really lives up to its expectations. And I wish America, and I'm not blaming America right now. I really think that the film really needs to be pushed around the country. More advertising. You had mentioned that it did, I guess, got a little bit of air during the Grammys. It actually would have been nice if the Grammys, if they actually would have said something, one of the entertainers, but I would like to see it pushed more and advertised more, so you get some more audiences, so it reaches more people and more people want to see it and even keep it in theaters longer. But that's my thoughts, but I'm excited to see it no matter what.
I'm hoping that we'll see a push over the next couple weeks on TV stations and stuff like that. Hopefully a 2-week push before the premiere will happen, because I know Baz has been coming on and talking about it a lot lately, and I guess we'll see. I know right now I've seen people putting pictures up from the UK and their theaters are selling out, but that's the way it always is over there.
You know what? It's funny. I don't want to interrupt you, but I was just getting ready to make a joke. Over in the UK, they could play this on IMAX at Wembley Stadium and probably sell it out.
Yeah, well, the Elvis the concert sold out Wembley Stadium over there.
And that's what I don't get.
I think that it was put out at the wrong time, and I'm very impatient and I really want to see it, but I think it was put out at the wrong time because it's got to go up against the Michael Jackson biopic that's coming out, and that is huge, and that's getting way more promotion than Epic right now. So I think it was put out at the wrong time, unfortunately.
And Abby, I'm going to agree with that. I'm going to agree that I think it's being put out at the wrong time. Not to mention, you're putting out at a time that it's the dead of winter. Um, Not a lot of people want to go out. And I don't care if it's inside or not. Not a lot of people want to leave their house in the dead of winter. I thought this
Right.
would have been a excellent release at the um the Elvis week. Release it to the
Yes.
whole country. Elvis
That's when
week.
I thought it was gonna come out.
It's the dead of summer. People will, might go out, might go see it. Right now I just feel like, or release it on January 8th, is his birthday. But release it on
Right.
a big date where he's in the news. Like, um, so again, I don't want to criticize and Baz. I think it's this is incredible and all the work he does, but I just think that the release dates and the promotion of it could be better.
I think he might have been pushed by the fans because the fans were bombarding him, his
I think
company, his people,
was.
and I think that's why we're seeing this release date because fans were being incredibly impatient.
This
And
is a hot take, and maybe this is just me, but I think there were too many premieres. You had the Toronto premieres and a few other premieres in Canada. Then you had the Elvis Week premiere, and now they're doing not
birthday week,
yeah, birthday week career, sorry, or premiere. And then now they're doing one in Vegas.
and they're doing one in Los Angeles.
Are they really?
Yeah, that's the
Two,
one that
yeah.
yeah, Baz is doing a thing in Los Angeles to debut it.
And,
But
and and you know what? And those are all great, because at these premieres, you can get all your stars and celebrities, and Baz can get all of his friends to come out and they'll sell out that theater. But the theater in the middle of, I don't know, some small town in the middle of the country or something, you're not going to sell them out. Like, what? I would hope that when we go down to see it on the 20th with our group, I would hope it sells out. It would be awesome. But
and I
I would
think
just love to see, the amount of people that in the United States, um, support him like they do over in Europe and the UK. It's just unbelievable.
Europe
here, here
Europe didn't have him, so they appreciate him more.
here's another
Correct.
take. Here's another take I got. I think we might see better regular theater attendance than we will IMAX because the Elvis generation doesn't get IMAX. They see it as something complicated and they can't, they don't know exactly what it means or what it is. And I think we might see better regular theater attendance a week later when it debuts in the theaters on the 27th. Um, Smaller theaters, not as expensive. So we might see more attendance once it gets past this big IMAX premiere. Because the IMAX, I believe, is only a couple nights. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a long run in IMAX. It debuts on. There's a sneak peek on the 18th. There's the debut on the 20th, and I think maybe through that weekend, and then that's it. And
They
then
haven't put out anything about the 18th. It's just happening,
yeah.
and people are finding it. I don't know why it's not being pushed.
But anyway, we'll see what happens, and I'm excited to see it regardless. And I think it'll be a big deal for Elvis, and hopefully the younger folks show up. And so, Wally, let's talk about Elvis in our lifetime. And so, I guess a good place to start is when you think back to growing up. What is like the first Elvis memory that comes to your mind as far as when, like, you might have discovered him, or what stands out?
You know what? It's funny, Kev, is I've been thinking about this a lot, and I cannot pinpoint a time like that I remember hearing Elvis for the first time. I
I
just
can't
can't
either.
pinpoint it. But I do remember, and you might laugh at this. I remember growing up when I was 5 and 6 and 7. Of course, Elvis was always on at the house, and I've always known who Elvis was, and it was never that issue. But when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I wasn't like as into him as much as you were. I was so involved in baseball and stuff like that. I didn't make it, my top priority. Even remember when, excuse me, when I was like 11 and 12 years old, me and the KB twins, we would come over there and you and Anthony would be playing music and Elvis and stuff. And we would make fun of you guys and we'd say sports roles. You guys would say music roles. And, I don't know if
I
you remember
remember
that. We
that
had
now.
this little battle of sports and music. Um, so, I'm going to say that the funny thing is, So Elvis was always on, and I was always a closet Elvis fan. And Abby, you are going to relate to this. So when I was in high school, and Kevin, you could probably say the same thing, you know, being an Elvis fan wasn't cool for some reason.
No.
Right.
And so like, when I was in school, like, it's funny because I always had like the thick black hair and stuff like that. And I had people in school who called me Elvis for no reason, and it used to make me really mad. And but looking back on it, so when I got into my late teens and my early 20s, now again, I don't want, we've listened to Elvis since I probably came out of the womb because, you were already 4 years old. And so I heard him my whole life and I always loved his music. But I want to say that in my early 20s, I want to say is when I really, really, really started to respect and really appreciate who he was as an artist, as an entertainer, because I didn't care anymore about, I wasn't in high school and thought about, oh man, Elvis is a cool thing. And I wasn't so much as heavily enthralled in baseball and stuff like that. And sports in general. So, that's when I really feel like when I truly started to appreciate who he was and what he was, um, even though he was a part of my life for my whole life. Um, and even going into my upper 20s when I started messing around with singing, and, I really didn't sing a whole lot growing up. And when I really started messing around with singing, obviously what my go-to was Elvis. And, so when I really started singing and just learning different songs and just listening to, you know, um, his his versions of songs and what the way he put it's like I have a different Elvis is just so different. Like when I watch him, um, I love just people who put passion and soul in a thing, whether it's sports or whatever. But Elvis sang with every bit of passion in his body.
Mhm.
And that is just what, when you see him, I mean, listening to him is incredible all the time. But when you see him live and or you see him even singing in movies, like you just see the passion that just comes out of his pores. And I think that's what, I'm not saying that, every entertainer or no entertainer has it, but Elvis just had it. I was listening to an interview the other day with BB King that was came out, I guess, a long time ago, and he was saying that when he first heard Elvis, like, he was okay, like, it was all right. He was just not that good of a guitar player, and he heard him, and then he goes, then all of a sudden Elvis turned into Elvis, and he just
Yeah.
had everything. He literally had everything, like the um the what's the word I'm looking for? The passion and the voice and the dance and the charisma is what I was looking for.
Yeah,
He
there you go.
literally he literally had everything, and you just and and we'll get into this in a bit as I go on, but when and I can even bring it up now, like recently, and I sent you a couple younger people and have these react videos
Yep.
watching him um for the first time, and just to see their reaction the first time, like, oh my goodness, I always thought Elvis was the hubba hubba hubba, lip curled, fat guy of the 70s. And, I don't know why America painted this portrait of him like that for the longest time. But now you see these kids who are watching for the first time and they're just like, are you kidding me? This is what I've been depriving myself of. And you're just seeing a whole new generation of people who are just love and respect him the way that we
Yeah.
do. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think you answered like my first 6 questions here in the first few minutes here. So that's cool. That I told you I knew it would turn into a conversation. Yeah, well, Abby and I spend a lot of time, especially Abby, watching those videos, and even people that in their 20s, 30s, 40s, you find them reacting to Elvis, and it's incredible. Yeah, they're saying the same thing. You know, this guy got a bad rap, and this is not. And I'll say it, people in the black community are putting a lot of videos up,
Mhm.
Yeah.
saying, "Man, we heard bad things about this guy, but I'm just not getting that. I love this guy." And yeah, it's absolutely incredible to see. So, like I said, you answered the first probably 4 or 5, 6 questions of talking about growing up in our house and how Elvis was always there. And do you remember mom and dad having any kind of influence on how we heard Elvis at all, or was he just kind of there?
Kevin, the Elvis that I remembered came from you. I don't remember. I mean, mom always loved him and would come downstairs, but I don't. As a kid, dad didn't show a whole lot of passion for,
No.
that just wasn't dad. And again, mom wasn't the one that played me records or anything like that, and so any kind of Elvis influence or where I heard Elvis, it was from you and in our basement. And that probably didn't start, Kevin. I mean, again, you know, growing up in Odenton and Millersville and stuff like that, we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have big record players and all that kind of good stuff. And we were always out playing as kids. But, so it really, I think for me, when we had our basement at Archwood, when I was, I guess I was, I don't know, 10, 11 years old. Um, that's when I have the most memories of Elvis being in my life all the time in that basement. We had Elvis pictures everywhere. We had, Elvis music playing all the time.
Yeah.
And so that basement we spent a lot of time in, and it was, so that's where I hold my most memories, and really that's where Elvis was enshrined into my system, was at that house on Archwood where we spent so much time in the basement, um, and a lot of good years there.
Yeah, the most I remember about dad, of course, is the night that Elvis died. Dad came in and he put American Trilogy on the record player, and I remember Abby and I talked about this during our Aloha from Hawaii special we did a few weeks ago. I remember when that came out for the first time on VHS and going to Blockbuster Video, I guess, and bringing home Aloha from Hawaii to watch on the VHS player the first time, and Dad just loved that concert. He remembered it, and I remember when Trilogy came on, he just told everybody to shut up. When that part came on, you weren't allowed to speak when the Trilogy was on. And I remember you remember my friend Paul Dowling, the consummate Elvis collector. Um, Paul got my collecting days started back in the day, and we went to his house in Towson to visit him. And I remember Dad walking in there, and Paul just had thousands of records and Elvis pictures all over the walls, and Dad he said, "There's nobody, there's nobody like this guy." He told Paul, "There's nobody like this guy, and never will be anybody like this guy." And so that's the most I remember about Dad. I actually have more memories of Mamaw. That's what we called our grandmother. Mamaw was a huge Elvis fan, and she always said he was so pretty. And
It's funny. I don't really, I mean, obviously I was only 3 when Elvis died. So I don't really obviously
right,
remember anything much of that at all. But, for those who may be listening to the podcast, I mean, I always say I have this, little connection with Elvis because he died on August 16th and my birthday's August 17th.
yeah, that's right.
It was 3 years later, but it was the day after. But I was only 3 years old when he died, so I don't remember, anything from that at all. I wish I did, but I don't. But So yeah, my Mama was a big Elvis fan. Of course, Chuck was a big
Yeah,
Elvis fan.
our Uncle Chuck. We had an Uncle Chuck named who had Down syndrome, and he was a huge Elvis fan. Absolutely.
Yeah.
He used to accuse me of stealing his Elvis records all the time.
I
You
didn't
know,
know he was an Elvis fan. I thought he was all like WWE and stuff
Oh,
like
he was
that.
a huge Elvis
uh,
fan. Yeah,
yeah, I was a big Elvis fan. It was so funny. I remember, and Kevin, I don't know if you remember this because we would play it over and over just to make him mad. Um, it was "I Can't Stop Loving You" from I think Madison Square
Madison
Garden,
Square Garden. Yeah,
where Elvis would repeat the end, and for
yep.
some reason Chuck hated that.
He
I
hated
don't
that. He
know.
said, "Dang repeat."
Yeah, I don't know why he hated that so much, but we
He
would.
did.
He did for some particular reason. He hated when he repeated it, and we would just play it over and over, and that always sticks out in my head.
I remember that. I had completely forgotten about that till you brought that up. That
Yeah,
he hated that we played. I used to go right into his room and get the album out and put it on, and he would get so mad
yeah, just because of that one part of the
just because
song
of
that
that.
repeated.
He would say, "Dang repeat, dang repeat."
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Well, so for you, are there songs or eras of Elvis that you connect like with more than others? Is there a certain time period, or do you like it all, or is it or does it have to be a mood that strikes you?
Uh, um, the mood is all about it. It's funny. I've told people this over and over. The funny thing is, just a few weeks ago, I was showing my mother-in-law something about Elvis. I can't remember exactly what it was, and she said, "Don't you ever get tired of Elvis, like the same stuff?" And I'm like, No." Like, um,
There's so much, you really can't.
yeah. So it's like I could be going down the road and just flipping through radio stations, and I can't hear, just can't figure out what I listen to. And I don't care if I flip on Elvis radio and Song of the Shrimp is playing. I'm like, okay, I'm satisfied. Um,
Right?
so there's definite songs that will bring out. It's funny, like, you know, uh, my first girlfriend, Michelle, we were friends at first, and we were friends for quite some time and before we dated. Um, and I used to play this song at home all the time because I was afraid to tell her, like, that I liked her more than a friend. So I used to play this song, "I've Got a Thing About You, Baby,"
There you
all the
go.
time. And that song, I would play it over and over, and I'd be like, "Okay, this is all you gotta do. You just gotta tell her." And so that song always brings back those memories of that era of my first girlfriend, was because I always played that song. Um, but, there's so many songs, that bring out emotional feelings, like, every time I hear the trilogy, I think of Dad. Um, and, you know, there's just so many songs, like, I'll just hear, certain songs like Hurt. I hear the passion in his voice, and, um, you could tell that Elvis, I mean, the song might not have been written about a certain part of his life, but you could tell when Elvis speaks in that song, like, just you could feel the emotion, and like when he would, you know, talk so emotionally in that song, like I could feel that emotion, like I could feel it. Um,
Yeah, Elvis's
um,
voice was a great storyteller.
oh my, it's just incredible. But yeah, there's a lot of songs that I will play, that I'm just trying to think of some off the top of my head.
Well, another one of my questions, you're kind of walking right into it. Are there Elvis songs that hit harder with age? Like, like now, do they hit harder now than 20, 30 years ago?
Oh, 100%. Especially now, I'm an emotional person anyway. Um, and songs like, "Pieces of My Life," um, you know, um, "My Way," or not, even though it's not an Elvis song, but he
Yeah, but
sang it.
he made it his.
Right, made it his.
Sorry, Sinatra.
Um, and then, there's just so many, like, um I'll hear songs like, you know what? And I dated, I dated a friend of mine's girlfriend. He dated her, then I dated her. And then so, uh, I hear that song, you know, um, Kevin, help me out here. I'm drawing a blank for some reason.
Uh-oh.
Um, when you sing a friend or you bring a friend into your love affair,
US mail? Oh,
yeah,
no. That's when your heartaches begin.
that's when your
US
heartaches begin.
mail?
Well, he was
Sorry.
talking like US mail there. That's yeah.
No,
That's when
sorry.
your heartaches begin.
That's where your heartaches begin. So, like, I, you know, I, I dated a girl. He dated her for a couple of years, and this is Kevin Worsley. I'm sure you remember
Oh,
him.
yeah, no, Kevin, yeah.
And when I dated the girl Dawn, and then he dated her too. So I'll hear that song, and it makes me think of that situation. Um, I mean, so there's so many songs that come to mind in certain parts of my life, but I mean, it's all the time. I mean, I have sometimes I have a hard time pulling stuff off the top of my head, but Kevin, it's all the time where songs relate.
It's amazing. So, you're probably like me, obviously I listen to a lot of different music. I spent years in the country music industry, and you love country music, and, you're a huge Kenny Chesney fan. So you probably go through seasons where you might not listen to Elvis as much, but do you ever find yourself going back to Elvis during certain seasons of life? Or is he
Um, you
just
know,
always there?
I got to tell you, Kevin, he's always there a lot. Like, I mean, here's the worst part. Well, you know what? I can't. Let's rephrase that. This is not the worst part. I'll find myself where I won't listen to anything else but Elvis, and I'll be like, man, I got to listen to something different.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll be listening to like, man, like I mean, this is all I'm listening to, and um, so I got to tell you that 85% of the music that I listen to is Elvis, Kenny, and Garth. I mean, that's
Yeah.
majority. I mean, I listen to other music, but those are the three people that I listen to all the time. And again, we both have a huge history. George Strait, Conway Twitty, and Vince Gill. I love all those guys, but it's not like the radio anymore. Like, I mean, some people still listen to radio, and you hear a lot of different stuff. But I put my playlists on, and it doesn't consist of a whole lot. Um, again, and I go back to my happy place. Like, I'll be in the car and I'll be like, oh man, I'm going to be in the car for 47 minutes, and I'll be going down the road and like, oh man, I only got like 4 minutes left. And what I want to listen to in the last part, it always ends up being back to Elvis probably.
Yeah, there's just something about him. It's just that voice. It's just, you can be in the worst mood, and a lot of things going wrong, and you flip him on, man, and just something about him. Even Paul McCartney, I remember saying one time, he said, man, I can just be in the worst mood and just going through a lot of things, and I put on All Shook Up or Don't Be Cruel on my record player, and I'm instantly out of that mood. So
It,
it's,
you can get lost in his music. Um,
Mhm.
like I think of songs like, That's All Right, Mama. I hear just the beginning guitar part of that. And soon as I hear it, I'm like, oh God, it just takes me to. So a couple questions ago, you asked me there was a certain genre that I liked, right?
right.
I love every genre of Elvis. I could do without some of the 60s stupid songs, but it was just Elvis.
The
So
movie stuff.
it was Elvis. But um, we all love the raw, 1956 where he came out and he didn't care who thought what. Um, and he just took the world by storm. And that was the coolest version to me of Elvis because he was so new and he was just, the country didn't know what to think of him. And it's funny. I want to make a point here in a second too. It's ridiculous, but so that version of Elvis is cool. Then he goes to the army, and he ends up taking opera lessons, and he starts getting into the more of the serious song you get. So 'cause when Elvis was younger, his voice was he almost very high pitched.
He was almost a shouter before the army.
Yeah. And then when he comes out of the army and a few years into the 60s, you start hearing this is deep, not a deep, but more of a fulfilling, deep,
Mature. Yep.
full, mature voice. Um, and that just got better with age, and that brought itself to a head at the 68 comeback when he did If I Can Dream. People were like, just here he is. He's just took the world by storm again. He was gone for all this time. People saying his career was over, and all of a sudden he does If I Can Dream in the 68 comeback, and just he's on top of the world again. And he just showed the world he was just this new, another as only he can do. Um, and then and that's what, when people say, can you get tired of Elvis? It's almost impossible because
It is.
you have the 50s, you have the 60s, and then the 70s, and it's literally like almost three different people.
It is.
And so now you get into the 70s, which is probably my favorite Elvis because of his voice. And the songs like, Your Just Pretend and Your Bridge Over Troubled Waters and Your trilogies and You Don't Have to Say You Love Me and all these just Suspicious Minds, which I love, but it's almost like becoming Hound Dog.
Yeah,
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
they played the devil out of
yeah,
it.
um, but thinking of songs like How the Web Was Woven and stuff like that, like eh, that
Oh, God, the
passion
off
and
the wall stuff is the best.
There's just so much to
yeah,
listen to because not only do you have all the studio music, you have outtakes and you have home recordings and stuff from the Million Dollar Quartet. There's just so much to see. I'm still finding stuff that I haven't heard.
yeah, and Abby, you know what? It's funny you say that, honey, because growing up, your dad and I, we didn't have that. We didn't have all
Right.
the takes and stuff like a lot of that stuff is new. Now there was some stuff Kev, that we had,
Yeah, there was
um,
a few things.
but a lot of it you had to get by bootleg.
Yep.
Um, and
Thank God I had those connections, 'cause I did get some
right,
good bootleg stuff.
yeah. Um, so, but we didn't have a lot of those outtakes and stuff that they keep releasing, and but yeah, you're right. There's just so much you could listen to, and I just don't. I could just never get tired of it. Again, I could drive across the country and listen to Elvis radio for 3,000 miles, and it would not bother me.
Same, same, absolutely. So here's one that wasn't on the list, but I always we bring this up to our guests we had so far. Elvis movies. Where do Elvis movies rate in your fandom? Do you find yourself sitting around and say, "Hey, man, we'll throw on an Elvis movie," and where do his movies rate in your fandom?
Are you asking me what my favorite movie was? Or are you asking me where,
I mean,
like,
just overall, do you? I mean, is it a big part of your fandom where you find yourself getting in the mood, getting in the mood to watch an Elvis movie and throw it on, or is there certain ones that you go to when you do get in the movie a mood to watch an Elvis movie?
I will tell you, and I don't want you guys to take this as a shun at Elvis, but
No,
um, the movie part of his career is the least part of my fandom with Elvis. Now there are, when I say King Creole,
okay.
Loving You, Jailhouse Rock, Roustabout. I'll even throw Girl Happy in there. Let's see, like
What about some of the later
Blue
movies like
Hawaii,
Change of Habit, something
Blue
like that?
Hawaii,
Tomorrow.
Change of Habit. But again, the movies weren't my favorite. I like the soundtracks more. Um, then hold on. Um, oh goodness gracious. I hate, we're on a live podcast, and I hate when
That's
my
all right.
mind goes a blank. The one with um um
Good old what's her name?
yeah, good old what's her name? You know that song with the words. Um hold on. Um Anyway, I'll get back to I'll think of it in a minute. Um
I know, like me, 'cause ones that I never did get tired of were That's the Way It Is and Elvis on Tour. I could watch over and over and over and over and over and over and over again.
And so it's funny you say that. So when you say to me, you're going to get in the mood and put an Elvis movie, I'm going to put on Elvis on Tour. That's the way it is.
Yeah, the documentaries. Yeah, because it's
documentaries. I'm going to put on, Aloha. I will watch Aloha anytime, anywhere. I love watching. I'll go on and look for old concert footage. Like, again, the movies were a great part of his career. I got to tell you, I don't spend a whole lot of time in them. Again, I'll watch King Creole over and over because not only is it a great movie, but a great soundtrack. Jailhouse Rock, Blue Hawaii, Roustabout, I will watch.
Love Roustabout. Yeah, love it.
Especially if I'm having a bad day. Now, is it the best movie, or is it going to win him an Oscar? No. But
I love Follow That Dream. I thought he was brilliant in Follow That Dream.
Great, Follow That Dream was
comedic.
good. But something about Roustabout. It's a feel good movie. I love it.
It's a great soundtrack. It's an underrated soundtrack.
Live a Little, Love a Little is very underrated.
Thank Abby. That's it. Live a little, love a little. That's what I was trying to think of. There it is.
There you go.
Yep. And my favorite song from Live a Little, Love a Little was
Edge of Reality.
Yeah, Edge of Reality.
Edge of Reality.
I'm going to tell you, man, this pulls. Did you ever watch Jeopardy?
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes.
Okay, so you watch Jeopardy, so it gives me these questions to be asked, right? And these contestants can literally pull stuff off the top of their head without it's insane. And here I am, an Elvis fan my whole life, and I can't pull something off the top of my head. It's just incredible.
So here's an important question for our podcast, because our podcast is about bringing two generations of Elvis fans together. And I got to tell you, Wally, Abby already has several guests lined. I'm trying to catch up to her. She's got these young ETAs. They're 13 years old at Wally, 14 years old, 15 years old, competing in the youth division of the Elvis tribute artists. Can you believe there's a youth division of Elvis tribute artists? So the question is, how do you feel seeing younger people like Abby and these guys connecting with Elvis?
I love the connection with Elvis. I absolutely love it. And if that's the way it's got to happen, that's the way it's got to happen. Look, I think I've mentioned this before. I'm not the biggest fan of ETAs. I like them, to me, I love that they're keeping his music alive. I love that it's done so well for him. I love seeing the young people, I guess, that are doing it. But I'm just so, I'm just so pro Elvis that, I'm not going to watch an ETA. I'll throw on, Elvis on tour or watch a concert. It's just ETAs. I mean, I respect them, and I love the ones that have great voices, and I do. I love it. And maybe it's just me, but I love watching what's his name, do Roy Orbison. I think that's incredible. Jesse. I love watching that kind of stuff, and you doing Conway Twitty, but it's something about. I am so critical when it comes to ETAs. Now, here's the thing. Okay. There's ETAs that go out there and they love Elvis and they support the music and they talk about Elvis being Elvis, and that's great. Then you got other ETAs where I really, truly believe sometimes they think that they're Elvis, or
they do.
Think
you're absolutely 1,000% right.
Or they think they're better. And that's the ETA part that sometimes drives me crazy. And it's great that these people are I guess they're making a living out of it and stuff like that, but they would never even have the opportunity if it wasn't for Elvis. And I love that people want to keep his memory alive, but with that said, I hope it's more about Elvis than it is about something about I'm going to act like Elvis. And that's where I get it.
you can watch shows and tell the difference between the ones that are doing it because of their ego and ones that are doing it because they just love it. Like my buddy Jeff Crick Jr. up in Pennsylvania. He just absolutely adores Elvis. And when he comes out on stage, it oozes the love for Elvis just radiates from this kid. He walks around and before the show with his glass, his eyeglasses on and his hat turned backwards and and his shorts and he just has no air. You would never know that that's the guy that's about to do the Elvis show. He just
Right, and it's like that with people like Cody Danath, my favorite ETA. When I first saw him at the Florida Fest, in Ocala, um, he was walking around in a, Elvis, like, sweatshirt and, sweatpants, and I went over and I talked to him, and I had a full conversation with him before the show.
there's guys that definitely do it because they love him, and then there's ones that they never come off stage. Or I won't mention any names, but there's a guy that walks around. If he goes to Burger King, he'll go to Burger King in the Madison Square Garden press conference suit, and it's just those are the ones that drive me absolutely nuts. But
Agreed. That's what again. When you say ETAs and stuff like that, I mean Elvis tribute artists. See, I don't. Elvis tribute artists to me should be different. There should be Elvis impersonators, which are 90% of what is out there. Then there's Elvis tribute artists. To me, an Elvis tribute artist is Terry Mike Jeffries,
oh,
Ronnie
hello.
McDaniel. Like, these are Elvis tribute artists. Elvis tribute artists are guys that are out there that respect the music so much that they don't need to put on the Elvis getup. They don't need to put big chains on and slick their hair back. They get on stage and they sing his music and are proud of what he created. That's an Elvis tribute artist to me. The rest
Absolutely.
are Elvis impersonators. That's just look, I might be in the low percentage, but that's just my opinion. I think an Elvis tribute artist is one who just gets on stage and sings his music. The others are just Elvis impersonators.
So it's been 49 years this year that Elvis will be gone, August of 2026. So what do you think 49 years later, what do you think keeps Elvis relevant all these years later? Why is he still so important, so relevant, still such a big part of our culture?
Well, you're gonna hate what's gonna come out of my mouth, but I don't like her. But I will say that Priscilla, after he died and opening Graceland to the public, starting EP Enterprises, stuff like that, I really think
Well, EP Enterprises already existed before her, but
right. But
and
I
it
really
was
think
the way that it happened. Honestly, was there was a group of lawyers and people in Tennessee that wanted that house opened and made her the face of it. She really wasn't the brainchild behind it because, to be honest, every business she ever had failed. And she was pretty much made the face of it. They said, "This is what we want to do. You go out there and be the spokesperson." That's how that happened. But
well again, neither neither here nor there. That helped keep Elvis going for a while. But I'm going to say, you know what, and you know what, I want your opinion on this. To me, I'm going to say in the mid to late 1980s through the mid 90s, late 90s, I'm going to say Elvis fans were dwindling.
they were.
And then Elvis Radio came out, can't remember what year. They started doing a lot more new technology stuff. Then the rubbernecking song came out, the remix of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say in the mid 2000s, all of a sudden, Graceland's doing different things, different exhibits and making Graceland bigger than what it is now. As a person who just loves original history stuff and stuff like that, you kind of hate it, but they knew going forward that just Graceland sitting there was not going to probably sell to the new fan. So they did, in the mid 2000s and stuff like that, they started redoing Graceland, different exhibits, remixing songs and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, Elvis was back in your
Yeah,
face.
there was another comeback again, and
There
then
was another comeback again.
and then in the 2020 late teens, 2020s, there was a dwindling that started happening again, and that's when Baz Luhrmann stepped in, and we talked about the movie in was that our last podcast, Abby? Our last episode, we talked about the movie.
Yes.
Um, and that movie, I think we talked about it, Wally. There's a lot of historical inaccuracies and stuff in the
Yeah.
movie, but that movie single-handedly brought a brand new generation of Elvis fans into the fold.
100%. And it's funny, we were talking about the reaction videos earlier, and there's the one guy that said he had never, ever heard Elvis sing anything. And then he watched the movie, and that's what inspired him to be like, man, I'm going to go start listening to this guy. Where have I been? And then he does the reaction video, and he's like, incredible. And so, yeah, the Baz and the new Elvis movie brought, again, I'm not taking anything from Baz. You know what? Baz deserves all the credit, because you know what? He took Austin Butler. He said, you know what? Austin, you have a similar Elvis look, doesn't look exactly like him, but he knew, if I throw Austin Butler in this movie, he's a good looking kid.
Oh, yeah.
He was an incredible Elvis. And he's like, I am going to be able to get a lot of younger, age girls to come to this movie, but just because Austin Butler's in it.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about that because Austin was big on Disney and Nickelodeon and stuff like that. So the kids knew who he was. So it was a brilliant move. It was a brilliant casting by Baz to put Austin Butler in that position, because a lot of kids came to the movie to see Austin Butler and walked out Elvis fans.
And then get this, how brilliant is Baz? And it shocked me that he took it. So Baz not only brings in Austin Butler, who's going to sell to all the younger crowd, but then he goes out and gets Tom Hanks to play the Colonel.
Arnold Tom, yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're like, man, it just Tom Hanks fans in general, like, man, Tom Hanks movie, I'm going to go see it.
That legitimized the movie. That casting of Tom Hanks legitimized that movie.
100%. And,
Oh,
when
yeah, I
people
got
say,
interested in Tom after I started watching his movies.
Abby has a question while ahead next.
Oh,
sure, go ahead.
what was it like growing up with my dad as a tribute artist and being in newspapers and going and doing all these big Elvis shows and being on TV and everything?
I mean, I didn't really pay much attention to it because I was so entwined or so involved in sports, that I really didn't think about it a whole lot.
It was just
Again,
what
when I
little
was,
brother did.
yeah, it's what little brother did. Like we were
Or
so
big brother, I'm sorry.
or big brother, right? When I was Abby, when I was growing up, like I lived and breathed baseball. That's just what I did, and then and basketball, and I spent all my time playing sports. If I was home, I was outside playing basketball or baseball or bouncing the ball off a wall, and Kevin was downstairs singing music or something. That's just what we did. And then in nighttime, we spent a lot of time together. And and again, that funny story I tell when I was 11 and 12, we would have this battle. Like me and my friends would be like, music stinks, and they'd be like, sports stink.
I did the TV show on WJZ in 1987 on Channel 13. And Wally was more excited about the fact that I was doing the show with John Buren, who was the sports broadcaster on
Yeah.
WJZ at the time, than he was about me doing the Elvis show.
Yeah, so Kevin's out doing the show, and I got to go back and sit in John Deeran's office where, he was getting ready and stuff like that. And so I was, I thought it was cool that that he was doing the Elvis thing, but I was more enthralled that, I'm getting to hang out with the sportscaster for WJC.
Who was a
And
huge
we're
Elvis fan. I don't know where he's at these days. I know he's still alive. I don't know where he's at these days, but he was a huge Elvis fan.
Yeah,
So,
it's funny. We learned a lot about John that day. You talk about someone that cared about his hair like Elvis did.
oh, he
Every
sure
break,
did.
every break, he made sure his hair was perfect.
Yeah, he did. He was crazy about the hair. So to get ready to wrap things up, here's an important question to wrap with, and then we'll have closing thoughts and stuff. So, what's one thing as a huge Elvis fan, a lifelong Elvis fan? What's one thing that you hope people understand about Elvis that often gets missed? If you had to talk about something that gets missed about Elvis, what's one thing you hope people understand about him?
It's it. I think, and I think this is changing. I think as especially like in the '90s and the 2000s, like a lot of times you just, again, you would hear people like Elvis, oh, the curled lip, it was all that, you know, um, Elvis, and obviously as he got older, obviously he got health issues and he gained some weight and stuff like that. And people would only see that. They would only see that part of the Elvis, and I don't get that.
Yeah,
A lot of people had, drug issues. Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, and all these people
so
had
many.
back in the '70s had drug issues, and they weren't looked at like that. I mean, I know, but maybe it's because Elvis was the king, and Elvis was so he was Elvis, and maybe that's why, because when he got a little bit, heavy because of his health, it wasn't because now his diet wasn't the greatest from what I understand, but but a lot of his weight issues were because of his health. Um,
Absolutely.
and I feel like the one thing I would like people not to do is to focus on that 1975 and 76 and 77 Elvis where his health was declining and he looked like that. Don't stereotype Elvis into that, because what they don't understand was even when his health was declining, he never stopped. He never stopped.
No, he didn't.
He always played for his fans, and his voice never failed him. His voice
And
continued to get better. I mean, he was singing operatic songs like "Hurt" and
and the funny
"Unchained
thing is,
Melody."
when we were coming up as Elvis fans, watching the '77 concert was one of our favorite things. We put it on a lot because I had the videotape of it because of the notes, because of the voice.
Because of the voice. Yeah,
I
my
mean,
my my favorite version of "Can't Help Falling in Love" to this day is the last concert
mine
version
too.
where
Absolutely.
he
And
just
how great thou art and hurt. Oh
how
my
great that
goodness.
art. Yeah, it's the so that's what I want people. If I can say one thing to people, is just, again, it's not about, what he looked like in the end. Just go back and watch the early Elvis. Watch how raw he was, um and then as he continued, he was able to change with time as he needed to, and then he just, again, towards the end, his voice was so incredible. Again, so the other night, I was driving up here to Reading, PA, and I'm not gonna lie, I had really never listened to um the Engelbert Humperdinck, or whatever, Bridge Over Troubled Water, was what's her name's
Oh, it's Simon and Garfunkel.
Simon and Garfunkel. Sorry, I don't know what made me think that Simon and Garfunkel. I never listened to Simon and Garfunkel's version, really, of Bridge Over Troubled Water. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna listen to Simon and Garfunkel's version, and then I'm gonna listen to Elvis's version right after it. And I listened to the Simon and Garfunkel version, and you know what? It's good. It's good.
Hmm.
His voice is incredible, but it's almost like he is, if you listen to it, singing it like a robot.
Hmm.
Very straightforward,
Emotionless.
emotionless, correct. Um, and then Elvis took it and he just it just he Elvisized it, and he was able to take any song and just make it his, and it was. I don't care what song it was. And I heard a great story the other night on Elvis radio about that. Um, they were in Nashville recording on one of these sessions where Bridge Over Troubled Water was recorded. And I know we're probably way over the time limit, but
No, you're fine.
um,
This still has no time limit, so
um, so they were telling the story. They said you always had to be ready for anything. I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name that they were recording as part of the session. And he said, you always had to be ready for anything that Elvis might say. So he said, Elvis walks into the studio and he says, hey, you guys hear that new Simon and Garfunkel song that came out today? They're like, oh, what? No, what is it? Or not, maybe not coming out. You guys hear that new song they have and Bridge Over Troubled Water? They're like, oh, yeah, there's like in the top five, top five hit for him. He goes, I want to show him how to sing that song. And, and so literally he walks in, they had never played it before. And he basically said, look, we're going to learn this right now and I'm going to record it in that session. And he just walked in and took charge and said, I'm going to record Bridge Over Troubled Water on a whim.
yeah, we stood where that happened. That was at Studio B in Nashville. So yeah, we stood right where that happened at. And it's funny because Paul Simon, they were at one of the 4 shows that Elvis did at Madison Square Garden, and 2 of them were we've heard, the afternoon and then the evening show, but there was 2 more shows that nobody's ever heard. And he did sing Bridge Over Troubled Water at one of the Madison Square Garden shows, and happened to be the one that Simon and Garfunkel were in the audience. And Paul Simon said that when he heard Elvis do it, he said it's his now. He said that's the way that they imagined it, but they couldn't pull it off.
It's funny you said that, Kev. While I was listening to that version, it almost makes me wonder back, to wonder if like Simon and Garfunkel, what if they would have went to Elvis and said, hey, we have this song that we'd love to pitch to you, and sing it and record it. I'm almost wondering if it would have been like a #1 hit for him if Simon and Garfunkel never would have released it first.
Most definitely. But the problem would have been Colonel Parker would have stood in the way and would have wanted 100% of the publishing and all of that kind of stuff, and probably would have got in the way of it.
Yeah,
Because he wouldn't let
right.
good songwriters get to Elvis, and that probably would have. So since Elvis discovered it himself and wanted to record it, wasn't a problem. But it would have been a #1 single for Elvis. It would have been probably bigger than their versions. Even their version was huge. Elvis's would have been bigger, and a lot of people today, when they think of Bridge Over Troubled Water, they don't think of Simon and Garfunkel. They think of Elvis. Like when people hear My Way, they don't think of Frank Sinatra. They think of Elvis.
Right. Blue Suede Shoes. They don't think of Carl
They
Perkins.
don't think of Carl Perkins. When Elvis got a song, it was his, and it was no getting it back. Because I've told Abby this a few times. I said when Elvis heard a song, he could have been sitting in a room with 20 people, and when Elvis heard a song, he was hearing it completely different than everybody else in the room was. That's All Right Mama. When you listen to the original, That's All Right Mama. And he was just a young guy then. But he heard in his head, That's All Right Mama, completely different than the Arthur Crudup version.
Yeah.
He just had a built-in, God-given ability to transform a song.
Yeah, and that is funny. Like this was a great. Again, I was listening to this on the way up to writing it, and I was on Elvis radio, and God, I wish I could remember Chip. Trying to remember the gentleman. Yes, that's who they were interviewing.
1969. He produced the American Sound Session, Suspicious Minds, and all that.
Okay, they were interviewing him, and he was the one that was telling the story about the Bridge Over Troubled Water. And then he said, Elvis would just walk into a room. And he goes, Elvis was Elvis. Like he could just take over a room. Like he just had, when he said something, like it he said you almost had to be there. Like he could literally just take over a room. And, you could have a whole recording session planned, and then Elvis will come in, but just something off the wall. And all of a sudden, that's what you're doing. He said he walked in one day. He goes, "You guys ever hear Chuck Berry's song Promised Land? I want to record it."
Boom.
And like completely unplanned. And the uh John, the guy on the radio, he says, "Well, wouldn't that drive the colonel crazy?" And Chip was like, he said, "Well, this time the colonel wasn't there." And so Elvis, really had free reign. He didn't care. He just said, "I'm doing it."
And I wish you would have done that more. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Well, this has been a great interview, a great time, and thanks for joining us tonight, brother.
absolutely,
And
man. We could go on and on and on. This podcast could last all night.
yeah, it really could. It really could. We're planning on these being about an hour with interviews and stuff like that. So
This is probably our longest one
this
yet.
is our first hour-long one. So we nailed it. So we want these to be
Awesome.
about an hour or so. So
Awesome.
all right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us tonight, brother. You stay safe up there in Reading, Pennsylvania, and this will be debuting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on all places where you can hear podcasts at Apple, Spotify, YouTube. I can't think of all the other ones. Pocket Cast,
Hey,
Pandora, Amazon Music. It'll be up on all those tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So
hey,
thanks for
before we
joining us.
before hey, hold on one second. Before we end the show, let me ask you a quick question real quick, but I don't think there is. Are there any Elvis spots in Reading, PA?
I don't think so.
We'll have to look it up. I don't think so.
I don't think so. Not far from there, obviously, Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Pittsburgh, Philly,
He
stuff
performed a
like that.
lot.
I'm sure there's spots, but I didn't
Yeah,
know if
there's
he ever did like
hotels
a
and
small show. And
yeah, there's hotels and stuff in Pittsburgh that he stayed at that are still there. Philly, there's hotels and stuff, and I think venues are still there, I believe. And so yeah, there's not too far from you, so maybe you can venture
The
one day.
the place where I was
yeah,
supposed to see Billy he played there.
Yeah, in Philly. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, Reading back in the day I'm sure wasn't much. It's not a whole lot now up
No,
here. So
definitely
I didn't
not.
know if he ever ventured to this area or not. But that's one thing. Again, we got to end this thing, but that's one thing I always do if I'm on the road is I look for Elvis spots. So
Right.
Absolutely. That's a fun thing to do. All right, folks. Well, we're going to sign off. We will see you all next week for the next broadcast of the EP Fan Zone podcast, a podcast by, for, and about Elvis fans. We will see you later.
good night,
Bye.
everyone.